Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving into something that's honestly kind of all around us these days, gamification. Like how can we make technology more appealing, even fun to use?
Yeah, it's really interesting to see how it's not just about video games anymore. Like,
Exactly.
like everything's getting a bit of that game-like feel.
Right, like those fitness apps that are like, hey, you hit your steps goal, here's some digital confetti,
Yeah.
or those language learning apps where it's like you're playing a game, not just, memorizing verb conjugations.
Exactly.
So for this deep dive, we're actually looking at a 2025 research article, and it's from the Journal of Education and Learning.
Okay.
They did this really cool thing where they reviewed a whole bunch of studies on gamification and how it connects to this thing called the technology acceptance model.
You know what's fascinating is the researchers at the University Malaysia Sarawak, they were really trying to get to the bottom of,
Yeah.
how effective gamification actually is
Right.
in getting people to actually use new technology. And I think we've all been there, right?
Oh.
There's that app you just love using, and then there's the one you're like, ugh, I gotta use this thing.
Yes.
And I bet you the one you love using, it felt really useful and it was easy to use.
So that's where this whole technology acceptance model comes in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
TAM, yeah. It kind of boils down to two things.
Okay.
Perceived usefulness, basically, does this technology actually do something for me?
Right.
And then perceived ease of use.
Yeah.
Like, is it simple? Can I figure it out without pulling my hair out?
Got it.
So the researchers were really looking at how adding those game elements impacts those two core elements of TAM.
So they analyzed what, 13 journal articles
Yeah,
published between 2016 and 2020.
that's right.
So did they find that using those game-like elements actually changes how people see technology?
One of the things that jumped out at me was that just the number of studies on gamification and TAM increased so much during those years.
Oh, wow.
So it seems like researchers are really starting to realize that there's a real connection there.
It makes sense, though, right? I mean, gamification seems like such a natural fit for education, especially.
Yeah.
Like, I can't tell you how many times I was sitting in class wishing things were a bit more, game-like.
Yeah.
So did the research focus on any specific areas where they're actually applying this gamification stuff?
You're right. A big chunk of the research was focused on education. Like there were apps for helping students manage their routines, making learning more engaging,
Oh, cool.
and even one for learning JavaScript by managing like a virtual eco-friendly city.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah. Doesn't that sound really cool?
Yeah. So it's not just about making learning more fun, but about actually teaching real skills through those game-like experiences.
Exactly.
But it's not just education.
Right.
No.
Not at all. They also looked at how gamification is being used in internet banking, e-commerce, making online shopping more engaging, and even healthcare. Like there's a lot of potential there to take things that maybe feel like a chore and make them more, fun,
Yeah.
more engaging,
Okay, that is exciting. But when we talk about gamification, what are we actually talking about? What are these like game elements? Is it just points and badges?
I mean, points and badges, they're definitely popular.
Yeah.
But there's a whole toolbox of game elements that researchers are exploring.
Yeah.
So you have avatars, those digital representations of the user.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So you can kind of personalize your experience. Some use narratives using storytelling to make the experience more immersive. Then there are things like leaderboards to kind of, get that competitive spirit going.
Oh, yeah.
And levels to track progress.
Wow. Okay. So there's a lot more than I initially thought.
Yeah.
Were any of those elements like particularly common in the studies that they looked at?
As you might guess, points, leaderboards, and badges were definitely the most popular.
Yeah, makes sense.
But here's where it gets interesting. While they are super popular, some researchers are starting to think that these might not be the best for keeping people motivated over the long haul.
Really?
Yeah.
What surprised you most about those findings?
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to those like points and badges.
Let me see. Well, hashtag TTS, the deep dive episode 2025, 03809, part 2 of 3.
It makes you think, are they more like a quick burst of motivation that kind of fades away?
Like sugar rush.
Exactly like a sugar rush. Maybe there are other elements that could create like a deeper, more lasting engagement.
So it's not about just like slapping on points and badges, but really thinking about how to design those experiences so that they're inherently rewarding.
Yeah, that's what some researchers are saying. They're looking beyond those like surface level rewards and exploring how things like narratives or those really complex challenges can actually tap into our own intrinsic motivation, like that desire to learn and grow just for the sake of it.
That makes a lot of sense. But how did they actually measure whether this gamification stuff was working? Did they just ask people, hey, did you enjoy using this?
They went a bit deeper than that.
They actually measured things like, enjoyment and engagement, how much people actually enjoyed using that technology and how absorbed they were in that experience.
Right. So it's not just about having fun in the moment, but about whether that actually makes you want to keep using it.
Exactly.
Did they find that gamification has that kind of impact?
The results are promising. Most of the studies found that gamification not only made technology more enjoyable, but also increased the chances of people actually adopting it and using it long term. But there's another layer to this. The research paper mentioned that sometimes that original TAM model was modified or extended. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm curious about that too. Why would they need to tweak the original model?
Well, TAM is a great starting point, but researchers are always looking for ways to refine and improve these models. In this case, some studies added extra variables to really understand those subtle ways in which gamification works. For example, some studies included task technology fit, TTF.
TTF.
Yeah.
I've heard of that.
Hmm?
Can you explain TTF a little for those who might not be familiar with it?
Yeah, sure. TTF, it measures how well the technology aligns with the specific task the user wants to do. It's not just about whether the technology is generally good, but if it's the right tool for that specific job.
So if I'm trying to learn a new language,
Mm-hmm.
a gamified app that focuses on vocabulary would be a better fit than one that emphasizes grammar.
Exactly. And the research suggests that when there's a good task technology fit, gamification becomes even more powerful. It's like having the right tool for the job and then making that job itself more fun and engaging. But it makes you wonder, who are these studies actually looking at? Was it a specific type of person?
Yeah, were we talking about tech-savvy millennials, seasoned gamers, or was it a mix of folks?
Interestingly, the majority of participants were actually university students.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And a few studies focused on diploma students. Education really seems to be like a hotbed for this gamification research.
Makes sense.
However, it wasn't just students. Some studies actually looked at the general population, bank customers, even patients with anxiety and depression. It's really encouraging to see that researchers are exploring the potential of gamification across all these different demographics.
Yeah, it really suggests that the benefits of gamification aren't limited to just one age group or, just one area of life.
Yeah.
But speaking of areas, where did all this research take place? Was it a global effort?
While the studies offer some really valuable insights geographically, they weren't very diverse. In fact, out of those 13 articles, a significant portion came from Turkey.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. It would be fascinating to see more research from different parts of the world to get a more, holistic perspective on how cultural factors might influence how well gamification works.
Absolutely. There's a huge opportunity to expand this research and really explore how gamification plays out in different cultural contexts. So we've explored the research, but what does this all mean for our listeners? Why should they care about gamification and TAM?
That's the million-dollar question. I mean, we spend so much time interacting with technology. Why shouldn't those interactions be more enjoyable and rewarding? We talked about education, healthcare, finance. But where else do you see the potential for gamification?
The possibilities are truly endless. Imagine using gamification to motivate employees or encourage people to adopt sustainable behaviors, even making government services more user-friendly. What are your thoughts on that? Hashtag TTS, the Deep Dive episode 2025-0309, part 3 of 3.
Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't want to pay their taxes in a more game-like way?
Right. Makes it a little less painful.
Definitely. But this research paper wasn't just about analyzing what's going on right now with gamification, right? It also kind of hinted at some really cool directions for future research.
Oh, absolutely. They brought up some really interesting questions about where this whole field could be heading.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things they pointed to was personalization. Right now, most gamified systems are kind of like one size fits all, but we all know that people are motivated by different things.
Totally. It's like saying everyone enjoys the same type of game. Some people are super competitive, right? Others, they're all about collaborating or getting lost in a good story.
Exactly. So the future of gamification could be all about tailoring those game elements to what each individual actually finds motivating.
So imagine a fitness tracker that changes your challenges based on how you're doing and what your goals are.
Yeah.
Or a language app that adapts to your learning style.
Exactly. It's almost like having a personal trainer or a tutor built right into the technology.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
Constantly adapting to keep you engaged.
But even with all that personalization, are we still going to be stuck with just points, badges, and leaderboards?
Well, the researchers, they think we've only just scratched the surface of what's possible with game elements.
Okay.
They suggest looking into things like really complex narratives or intricate strategy elements, even bringing in more social interaction and collaboration.
So instead of just focusing on those like external rewards, we could actually be creating experiences that are so immersive that they tap into those deeper human motivations.
Right.
Like our desire for connection or for mastery or even a sense of purpose.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And that leads to another big question researchers are wrestling with. What's the long-term impact of this? Does gamification lead to real lasting changes in behavior?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about the immediate benefits, more engagement, enjoyment, that increased likelihood of using technology. But can it actually help us develop new skills and habits that stick around even after we've like leveled up or gotten all the badges?
That's the ultimate goal, isn't it?
Yeah.
To use gamification to help us tackle those big challenges like climate change, social inequality, or even just improving our own well-being.
It's pretty inspiring to think that gamification could be a force for good. Not just to make technology more fun, but to actually make the world a better place.
Yeah, it's a powerful idea, and this research gives us a really solid starting point.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive into the world of gamification and the technology acceptance model, or TAM.
It has.
It seems like gamification is way more than just a fad.
Yeah.
It really has the potential to change how we interact with technology and maybe even how we live our lives.
Absolutely.
We've explored the research, talked about all those exciting possibilities. Now we want to hear from you.
Yeah.
What are you excited about? Where do you see the potential for gamification in your own life or your work?
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to think big and get creative. The future is waiting to be played.